Here's another thing that Romanticism talks to us about. It talks to us about the way in which, when you really love somebody, you love everything about them. Of course, you love the amazing things about them, but oddly and touchingly, you quite love the slightly imperfect things about them. And that's why in the early days of love, there's a lot of kind of tenderness and excitement around the discovery of the less than perfect sides of somebody that are used, that feed into love and that intensify love. Maybe your partner's got a slight gap between their two front teeth. Not a problem. I mean, a problem for an orthodontist, but for you, it's charming. It's charming. Maybe there's that old pair of pajamas that their mother gave them and they put it on a cold night and it's got bear prints on it. It doesn't look that glamorous, it wouldn't win any fashion awards, but it's them and it's theirs and it's incredibly sweet and you love them all the more for it. So in a way, in the early days of love, the fragilities and vulnerabilities of another person are part of what makes that person so lovable. Until, you're getting the hang of this now, until maybe about 3 months in, a version of the following scenario happens. So maybe you've been out for a big night, etc., and it's morning, it's dawn, and you're having some breakfast, and you're having some cereal. Maybe they picked out a kind of granola-ish, sort of quite nutty kind of cereal, and they're next to you, and they're eating their cereal, you're eating your, and you just turn to them and you go, look, are you a cow or something? This just sounds disgusting. Just shut your mouth or something. And, this person suddenly turns around and goes, hang on a minute, this is like the third thing that you're criticizing me for in 24 hours. Well, I thought you loved me. And you go, no, I do love you, but you're eating like in a sort of bovine way. I mean, please stop it. And they get terribly offended and they go, no one's ever told me that before. And you want to go, yeah, because why would they? I mean, your friend was not going to tell you, your parents are not going to tell you, and your ex probably knew it but went off to India. So, the point is, no one's going to tell you. And you sound like a cow. At which point you've got a problem on your hands, because Romanticism doesn't allow for this sort of situation. It suggests that love is the acceptance of a whole being. And therefore, at one point in the relationship, one person is likely to say to another, if you loved me, why do you criticize me? So there's that if criticism is here, love is here, they should never be together, and if they are ever together, it's a sign that love has failed. This, again, is a disastrous philosophy. The idea that another person could spend any time with us and not spot a whole lot of things that are problematic is really the height of sentimentality. Of course, are you perfect? If you're not perfect, how on earth do you expect someone not to notice the imperfections and not mind them? But nevertheless, Romanticism tells us that no, this has no place. Look, let's look away from that rather unhelpful philosophy to an earlier vision of love. This one developed by the ancient Greeks, which I think is a lot more helpful. The ancient Greeks, very focused on love, as we are, but had a very different vision of what love is. They felt that love is admiration for the perfect sides of another human being, for the virtues, the qualities, the accomplishments in the character and achievements of another person. There's other stuff, of course, there's flaws and things, and you may be generous towards them, and you may be forgiving of them, but you don't love them. The word love is reserved for an admiration for what is virtuous and accomplished in another person. And for the ancient Greeks, the whole notion of love is that love should be a process of mutual education, in which two people, under the auspices of love, undertake to educate one another to become better versions of themselves. And they do this not to be cruel, not as a way of bringing each other down, but because they have the sincerest, best interest of the other at their heart. And therefore, love is a process whereby a teacher and a pupil are constantly rotating roles. Everyone is the teacher and everyone is the pupil at certain points and has lots of things to take on board. This is not a sign that love has been abandoned. It is the proof that love is in action. Now, this sounds so weird in the modern age. I mean, if you said to your partner, well, I went to listen to this guy at the opera house and he's got some various ideas and he's written a book, and on this basis I would like to teach you certain things. I would like to deliver a short but to the point seminar on your character, achievements and nature, way of eating. This would just be so weird. Again, they're like, what? Why I thought you loved me, etc. Now, why are we such bad teachers? A lot of relationship arguments can essentially be seen as failed teaching moments. There's something you want to say, and it goes terribly, terribly wrong on the journey to your listener. Why does it go so wrong? Why does the teaching lesson fail so badly? Partly because we don't think it's legitimate to teach. So if someone's telling you your job is not legitimate, you'll be a bit panicked. You're like, oh wow, well, if I'm not supposed to do this, how do I? So you're not relaxed. The other thing, of course, what makes a good teacher is that they're calm, is that they're relaxed. And one of the best ways to be a calm teacher is not to mind too much if your lesson doesn't really get through to the other person. So, a great maths teacher, they're calm in the classroom because there's not that much at stake. Of course they want their pupils to pick up a bit about trigonometry or whatever, but if they don't and if they flunk their exams, well, there'll be a new lot coming next year. It doesn't really matter. There's not that much at stake. The thing is that in love's classroom, we are much more tense. We are much more on edge. And the reason is that so much seems to depend on it. And the background of our thoughts is the most terrifying spectre as we're trying to teach. And the terrifying spectre goes like this. I think I've married an idiot. I think I've got to spend the rest of my life with someone who doesn't understand very basic, very important things that matter so much to me. And this person is not listening. And because they're not listening, we're going to ramp up the pressure and the tension, and we're going to start to be rude, and we're going to start to humiliate, and we're going to start to swear. And the terrible problem is that no one has ever managed to teach anyone anything by humiliating them. By the time you are humiliating your partner in order to teach them something, forget it. Bye-bye, the lesson's over. You are never going to get through that way. As we know from HR departments in offices, if you want to teach someone something, it's got to be 99% honey and a tiny, tiny little criticism at the very end. I love this, I love that, I love that. Did you know that thing that... That's maybe how you've got a chance of getting through. But we don't do this. So in love's classroom, we do not accept that love should be a process of mutual education. We know so much about our partners that no one else ever does. We've got a ringside seat on their charming sides and on their insanities in a way that no one ever will. But because we think it's a betrayal of love, that knowledge can't be shared, used, and grown with, because we are so brittle and defensive. As students of this, we simply fail to accept that the other person, if somebody tries to give us a so-called lecture, we might even use that pejorative term. Are you trying to give me a lecture? And, of course, Plato would say, yeah, I'm trying to give you a lecture because I love you. Because I love you, I'm going to give you a lecture, and I hope tomorrow you'll give me a lecture. And that's the way it works. But the romantics are like, oh no, I'm not going to stay with her. She gives me lectures all the time. Oh, I must leave her and let me lecture. And so what happens when love's classroom has failed? Well, then things get rather brittle. And rather than trying to teach, the couple descends into a cycle of mutual nagging and shirking. What is nagging? Nagging is what happens on the other side of an attempt to teach. You're no longer going to try and teach, you're just going to insist. You're going to force the person to believe and to listen. You're going to get very controlling and sort of ministerial, and you're going to insist that they're back at a certain time, that they do this thing. And you don't really care whether you're going to charm your way into their minds or not. You just insist that it's done that way. And meanwhile, nagging always has the counterpart in shirking. The shirking knows that tone. Well, they're going to pick up the newspaper, go upstairs, they're not going to listen. So there's a mutual deafness. Teaching and learning has gone completely wrong. And that, unfortunately, is very often what happens in relationships under the aegis of romanticism. Now, are we all to despair? Where's this going to go? Can we rescue this nosedive of feelings? Yes, we can. I think there's lots of things to be hopeful about. Sometimes people say to me things like, well, are you not really hopeful about love? Are you saying that we should just reduce our expectations? No, we shouldn't reduce our expectations. I really believe that we should go into relationships with very high expectations. The problem is that romanticism defined, very rightly, certain high expectations, but then gave us no way of reaching those expectations securely. It's like it set the bar, but then gave us no way of acceding to that bar reliably. So the task before us, I think, is to build the steps to get to the high place that we've accorded to love. Not to necessarily bring down love, but to try and find a way. And as Anne says, one of the characters in the book at some point says, it takes them a long time to realize this, but they do realize that ultimately love is not just something that you feel, it is ultimately a skill that needs to be learned. And it sounds very odd because we're so we're so in love with the notion of the intuitive relationship in which everything just comes sort of by nature, and if it doesn't come by nature, then it is wrong. And it's so contrary to the way we do other things. You know, we are an incredibly procedural society that believes that there are rules and techniques and tricks and ways of making things happen. But somehow in the area of love, we insist stubbornly on intuition. And it sounds so odd if you compare it with other things. I mean, imagine if I said to you, you know, I'm going to fly a 777 down to Melbourne tomorrow, and I'm going to land it by intuition. Or I'm going to perform a piece of brain surgery by intuition. You'd be like, what? That's crazy. Nevertheless, in the area of love, we're ready to embark on 50-year marriages by intuition, just hoping it's all going to go well. So what are some of these skills that we might need to develop? Well, let me give you just a few, and I throw these out, and there'll of course be so many more. But I think one of the things that can help, and it sounds rather odd, but one of the things that can really help is to learn to see your partner as a small child, probably between the ages of 2 to 3.5. Basically, to imagine that your partner is of roughly that age. Now, the reason I say this is that all of us nowadays are really pretty good around 2 to 3.5-year-olds. So let's imagine you've got one of those things at home, and you're cooking a dinner, and I don't know, you've made some schnitzel, potatoes, broccoli, and you give the kid the dinner. And it just goes, nah, and throws the whole dinner on the floor, nah, like this. And now you don't hit the child. You don't go, I've had such a hard day at work, and now this? Are you trying to bring me down? Are you trying to crush my character? You go, oh no, maybe you've got a sore tooth, or you must be quite tired, or maybe it's that jealousy with your sibling, it is getting to you, it's hard to share your toys. We'll come up with very gentle explanations of why a piece of behavior has appeared on the horizon that seems pretty mean. We don't necessarily believe that people of that age are mean. We simply feel that they're in some ways hurting, anxious, damaged in some way, and we want to help them. We're generous. Our adult love affairs do not find us in that kind of mood. I mean, we're constantly going, you try to bring me down, you're trying to humiliate me, you haven't given me the attention I need. We very much take everything extremely personally. You know, part of the problem is that we don't look like children. I mean, this is really unhelpful. Like, one of the great things about children is that they look like children. So you kind of just know that they are a child. But if you look at me, someone like that, you think, oh, this guy's an adult. He sort of looks like an adult. So it's quite counterintuitive to go like, many parts of this character are about 2.5 years old. You can't really believe it. But the thing is that you sort of have to believe it. I mean, the problem with psychological wounds and distortions is that you can't see them. I mean, it's literally as sort of simple as that. You can't see them. If I've got a broken arm, right? Everyone can see that I've got a broken arm. And you start to go, okay, the guy's like messed up his speech because he's got a bit of a broken arm. He must be in pain. And when he's going to walk through the door, we'll hold the door open. We'll make some special accommodation because we know he's not all that well in some way. It's just obvious he's got a problem. The thing is that all of us are kind of like that broken inside in various key ways, but there's no easy way of signaling it, right? We can't signal that we've got these wounds and breakages, etc. And so our partners don't necessarily give us the accommodation that they would. And that's why it's so important to realize that, of course, wandering through the world, everybody is very severely broken and in need of a lot of forgiveness, and generally, on the whole, not mean, just frightened. Most people are very, very scared, and the most appalling pieces of behavior normally have fear at the heart of them rather than evil. The other thing that's quite key, I think, and is a real achievement of love, is to learn to see your partner. Most of us, after a while, start to see our partners as idiots. They just are a bit of an idiot. And just like, oh God, an idiot thing has happened again with our partner. Now, this is why part of the reason why comedy and humor is so important in a relationship. You have to find a way to access the comedic part of all of you. Now, the interesting thing about comedy is that in comedy, many comic heroes are total idiots. I mean, if you think of someone like David Brent or Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm, these guys are just total idiots. But when we're watching the shows, we're kind of do this amazing thing, which is we both know they're idiots, but we kind of like them. We do this amazing metamorphosis. We start to see them as lovable idiots, kind of lovable idiots. And that is such a piece of ethical imagination. To turn someone from an idiot to a lovable idiot in your imagination is a major piece of maturity. And if we're able to achieve that, even sometimes in love, we will have learned very much how to temper our more punitive interpretations of who it is that we've got together with. The other thing that we need, of course, is to really reckon with our habit of getting into crushes. It was very charming at a certain point how easily we've developed crushes on people. And, for a time it was thrilling and, it really kept us going through certain years. But, we really have to get over the crush thing. Because the thing is, you don't need to know someone at all well to know, even though they look completely charming, and it was lovely to see them in the airline queue or at the supermarket briefly, etc. And that's why you got a little tetchy when you got home, just because they were sort of lingered in your imagination, that there was kind of an angel walking around the aisles of the supermarket or at the airport, and now you've had to go home, sadly, but there was this angel. We've got to get over it. And the reason we can get over it is by an absolute piece of scientific certainty, which is that there are no angels, they're only human beings, and every human being wandering the earth is very, very problematic from close up. You don't know how this person is disturbed and would drive you mad, but you have to know and take on board that they would. They just would. If you knew them better, despite their charms, and honestly, their ankles look lovely, and their little bit of conversation that you had at the conference was just very promising. But the point is, deep down, they will cause you immense trouble because not they're evil, they're human, and everybody does this. So, in a way, we're so obsessed nowadays, partly because of technology, with the idea of finding the perfect person, the right person. We're all the time swiping left and right in the search for that right person. The truth is there is no such character. Everybody is going to be wrong in substantial areas. There is no such thing. Compatibility, ultimately, is an achievement of love. It isn't and can't and shouldn't be its precondition. And therefore, the notion that we can only really get together with somebody when we have found somebody who matches us entirely. The person who is right isn't the person who agrees and condones every aspect of our character. It's somebody who negotiates the differences between two people in a particular way, with a particular generosity and, dare I say it, sometimes humor. This is the so-called right person, but not that they are in some ways, magical ways, perfect. Look, the other thing, let's mention it just very quickly, around sex. We live in an age of very high expectations around sex. Romanticism has prepared us for very high things. The whole subject is a little bit of a veil of tears, to be honest. There are really two things that we want in this area, and they run in completely opposite directions. All of us want safety. We want to be really safe and loyal with somebody, and loyalty brings with it safety. So we really want safety. And the other thing we really, really want is excitement. And the two just point in completely different directions. But periodically, and it happens on a kind of 20-year basis, people come along and go, I found a solution to this kind of safety, excitement thing. And you go, what is it? So in the 60s, people were telling us, it's called free love. So basically the deal is that you get a bit of both. You get safety in one corner, and you get excitement too, and it's really great. And nowadays we're deep in the age of polyamory. So a lot of people go, there's this thing I've heard, it's called polyamory, and it's great, it gives you everything. And jealousy is just this thing, it's dreamt up by capitalism, and you just, head out there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it just is not true. These two things are deeply incompatible. I'm not going to go into too much why. We can discuss that later if you like. But essentially, you really have to make a choice between varieties of suffering. What kind of suffering do you want to go for? Do you want to go for, and also what kind of upside is more important to you? Do you want to go for the safety loyalty thing, which is terrific? You get, fantastic kind of coziness, really sweet, but you will be missing out. And sometimes in the suburbs, on a Saturday night, you'll be like, oh wow, what's going on in the bars and the kind of swinging places of the city, and it's not for you. So you've made your choice. And then of course, there's the other choice, which is excitement, which is terribly thrilling, and new people all the time, and the first time you undress them, and it's all thrilling. But of course, it's utter chaos. Your life's full of recriminations, full of jealousy, full of confusion. The children are in a mess. But, there's the excitement. So really the choice before us is, what variety of suffering do you want to go for? Do you want to go for the chaos bit or the kind of boredom and stultification bit? Which one? It's like a choice. And, it's funny. It's good you're laughing, because I recently went... I recently went to the United States and did a book tour, and it didn't happen so much on the East Coast, which is like more closer to a kind of European sensibility. But by the time I got to California, by the time I was talking about this, there was literally a stunned silence in the room. I'm like, what? What? Well, you're saying like this, you can't make things perfect? What? We live in LA. Like what? But of course, I think, one of the great contributions, Britain is not responsible for very much that's totally perfect, but one of its greatest exports, one of the greatest British exports is melancholy. And melancholy is a really kind of useful emotion sometimes, because it's not fury, it's not rage. It's like, life's imperfect, but I'm dealing with it. I'm coping with it. I've got Morrissey, I've got Bach. I'm handling it. It's under control. And I think this is an area, this is an area where we may want to have recourse to that peculiar British gift to humanity. Look, am I saying that we should always stick with people? Are we in danger of saying that in that case anyone is worth sticking with? I don't want to say that. In many ways, marriage is a pretty nasty thing to do to somebody that you claim to love. It's putting them through some pretty difficult stresses. But and there are undoubtedly sometimes people that you should leave, some relationships which should be broken up. How can you tell? How do you know whether you should leave somebody? And I think there's almost a kind of simple rule of thumb. I think if you can look at your life, honestly survey its good and bad sides, and if you can honestly pinpoint all the things that are making you profoundly unhappy to your partner, if you look around and you think, okay, all the things that are really bringing me down, it's them. It really is them. It's them. Leave. If you really can feel that, just leave. Right? Then you should leave. But if you honestly take an audit of your sources of unhappiness and the many causes for which they're reverberating through your soul, and you look at your partner and you go, I'm not sure if I can fully blame them for everything, then stay. Because what you may have encountered is some of the unhappiness of existence in the company of another person rather than because of another person. So easy to merge the two. I mean, Great Britain has done exactly this with its marriage to the European Union. It very much believed that all of its unhappiness could be pinpointed to this thing. Getting rid of it, it would be happy. And now it's discovering a lesson that many people in relationships have also discovered painfully when it's too late. Should we even bother with marriage? My novel is about marriage in a way. It's a very much a novel focusing on long-term relationships with a marriage. Is there any point to it anymore? Many articles, normally about one a week in a major broadsheet newspaper, is always about, is marriage still in? Is it still relevant? And of course, it doesn't really make sense from all sorts of points of view. Like if you take a sober look at marriage, it's completely insane. It's like, hang on, I'm going to give half of all my belongings, and still nowadays people don't invest heavily in lawyers to kind of make things easy. We kind of jump headlong into marriage, and we still do it despite all the reasons why we might not. So why do we do this? And is it just a kind of insanity? Well, I don't think so. I think that the very fact that we make ourselves go through marriage and we invite all our friends and we have a huge wedding. So it would be so embarrassing if we had to call them all up and go, you know what? You know that TV you bought me? Really sorry. It's only been 3 months, but I'm quitting, right? Why do we publicly betroth ourselves to another person? Because I think a mature part of us knows that we benefit from the cage of marriage. It is a cage, but we put ourselves in it, we lock ourselves, and we throw away the key ourselves. Not because we're crazy, but because we realize that there are sides of our character that really can only develop in an environment in which neither of us can quit the room immediately. That actually the ability to run away, so tempting though it is not always of benefit to the things that we've got to work through. So we willingly encage ourselves because we realize that there is some kind of piece of maturity, some piece of growing up that is going to happen when we are locked together in a situation which we can't immediately accept at the huge cost and huge embarrassment. Embarrassment's very important. We're willingly entering into a situation which it would be deeply embarrassing to leave. We're not simply crazy. We're aware of the debt that maturity owes to being slightly locked into a situation. So look, I do believe that it is possible to have long-term relationships. I just think we need to run through a kind of checklist. When are we ready for love? When are we ready to really embark on this long-term business of love? I think you're ready to really go for it in love when you finally and conclusively accept that you really are crazy. And you have really quite a good handle on your craziness. And not least, you have a really good handle on your partner's craziness, and you have an absolute awareness that anyone you meet, even the most charming person on a train, is going to be very imperfect, because that's human nature. When you're ready to do the laundry, when you're ready to discuss towels ad infinitum, when you're ready not merely to insist that others will guess what's in your heart, but you may even have to use words to spell it out very, very patiently over long periods, and you're ready to believe that all of this, with a dose of humor, belongs to a sincere relationship, then, ladies and gentlemen, I think you are ready for love, and I would commend you to move forward on it. That's all from me. We've got a bit of time for questions. Thank you so much.